there are occasions where they have palletized freight, and then that would be moved with a hand truck, either a manual one or an electric one, which again doesn't make any noise. There was a question about sidewalk and street congestion. Again, they're sensitive to this. This is not their first time in Manhattan. So what they've tried, what they'll plan on doing, they will not unload. There was a question, are you going to unload the entire truck? And it's going to be sitting on the sidewalk for hours on end and blocking traffic? Of course not. They basically unload as much as they can to be able to deliver into the store. They don't want their merchandise sitting out there any more than we want it to. And then, of course, there won't be any major staging or freight outside. Another question there was a concern about backup or queue of trucks, and they manage that in a way where that the deliveries are staggered to avoid congestion and lineup of the trucks on the street. So just to summarize some of the points of concern, number one, delivery trucks will travel via Columbus Avenue. Target will limit deliveries between midnight and 5 a.m. Number of deliveries can be reduced with the loading zone. The trucks and hand trucks will not make beeping sounds. A limited amount of merchandise will be unloaded at any one time when the trucks deliver. And there will be, this was another question, is there someone who CB7 could stay in touch with directly, and they are committed to having the store manager will be remaining in contact with CB7 going forward.
Why don't they just make the trucking zone between midnight and 5 a.m.?
We're not ready for questions yet. We're just letting him get through the presentation.
Just ask a question.
And then I think we have the last slide here is that this is off the DOT website and identifies loading zones. We just picked, within a block or so of our site, and you can see that it's pretty common to have loading zones on side streets. I think people at the last meeting were suggesting it's very unusual, but it's actually quite common in and around our site to have loading zones already approved by DOT.
I did find my notes. So in my notes, they said that they would not be making deliveries during rush hour, which is 7 to 9 a.m. and 5 to 7 p.m. So that the trucks would not be adding to rush hour congestion.
Right. Great. That's it. Why don't we have questions from the committee first? Okay, Ken and then Andrew.
I just want to make sure I understood from the last meeting. If we didn't approve this loading zone and you ended up not going in, then there would be no tractor trailers coming in for Target. It would just be 35-foot trucks, except probably more of them.
I would not say that, no. I mean, they have to operate their business. In fact, what you would have are the big trailers double parked until they unload the merchandise.
So they'd be bringing the tractor trailers in regardless.
That's their plan.
Okay, if I can just point out that we had, I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Martin Piazzolla.
Martin presented last month. We had a lot of questions for him, and we asked Target to attend this meeting today. Instead, there was a telephone meeting that Target would talk to us on a week or two ago. I so apologize. I didn't bring my notes. And we asked them if they would attend this meeting. They said that they would try to get the general store manager, who will be the manager for Target, to attend this meeting, and that they would also make that person the primary contact for complaints for the community, to go through CB7 or bid or from whomever. Frankly, to have Martin make the same presentation without Target here, he can only make so many assertions. There's been a little bit of progress, but there's not much that he can do, and Target is not here, which is completely infuriating because they said that it was very reasonable to have the general manager here. So I'm dismayed and discouraged, and I don't know what you can do about it.
Well, I think what we tried to do, there were a number of questions from the last meeting. We did speak with Target several times. They put in writing. We had the phone conversation. And when we went through the slides, which we didn't have the last time, it addressed the questions about deliveries, about trucks, truck sizes, and all of that. So I wouldn't say, this is not productive, but they've addressed all of those questions in writing. And we just went through.
Yeah. Thanks. So perhaps I missed it if you answered this, but if that proposed loading zone is filled when one of Target's trucks comes, what would they be instructed to do? Would they circle the block up to 63rd and back to 62nd? Would they double park? Would they wait on the block? What would they be told to do?
They would do what's typically done. This is not the first time the loading zone is being approved. There is, a coordination that's involved. They send, like I said, they stagger their deliveries with their own trucks. If a truck happens to be there, there's a rule of, sort of operation amongst drivers that they work with each other and they'll find a spot where they're not blocking the entire street. This goes on every day in the city.
But the change, the new wrinkle in this thing is congestion pricing. And that will make 62nd Street a very different place, quite potentially. 61st and 62nd. I'm thinking of them going around the block, actually, but.
Yeah, I think what truckers do is they find they can't use the loading zone, they can't block traffic forever. They go around the block and they find a spot that's not terribly inconvenient. And then, these deliveries are not for hours and hours. It's more, less than a half hour. It's done every day. We're not recreating the wheel.
So what I'm trying to understand is if this is done every day, we've got a major retailer moving onto a residential block. What was the process through this entire process of them looking at the site and thinking, we're going to need to be bringing trucks and trucks of deliveries into the site? And what discussions happened through that process leading up to the fact that after they sign the lease, only at that point do you come to us seeking a measly loading zone that's going to be very disruptive to the neighborhood? And was this a topic of discussion at all about what they're going to be doing about bringing trucks in to bring merchandise into the store?
Right. Well,
and why is it only coming to us after the fact?
Well, that's not 100% true. We did have some early conversations before we signed the lease and gave CB7 the heads up that this was in the works, as well as DOT.
Who within CB7?
District manager.
Yeah. And as far as them, again, they've done this before. Two things. One, retail is permitted for zoning. So we didn't ask for any special permit and no variance. So this is all as of right development, which includes the retail component. Second, we have a loading dock that's supporting the retail as best it can. And third, there's actually a loading zone currently across the street. I mean, you can see right here, there's a loading zone right across the street. And there's loading zones in different areas. Okay. We were there today. I took a picture of it, and it says loading zone right across the street. If I'd like, I'll pass around my phone because it shows a picture of loading zone. I know Parks Department parks there.
Parks Department takes every space.
That's okay. That's up to them. I'm telling everyone for DOT, they're in a loading zone there.
That actually, thanks to the building across the street, that is actually being turned into a no standing zone.
No, that's
Further west.
Further west.
Yeah.
That is turning into a no standing zone, so the Parks Department and nobody will be able to.
They will be able to
park
park there, so.
I have a question. If you don't get the loading zone, can you describe how Target will receive its deliveries?
Well, really the same two ways. I mean, they'll use for the small trucks, they'll be using a loading dock. And for the bigger trucks, they'll have to double park.
Is that legal for them to do, or will I have to narrow street?
So why not on Broadway?
Follow up on that.
We need mics. Roberta, we need mics.
We need the mic.
Just to follow up on that, so what is the basis of your chart of the frequency of deliveries with and without the loading zone? What's, I mean, if you're gonna have tractor trailers coming in regardless, what's the difference between with loading zone and without loading zone?
Well, it creates an ease of delivery, and so they probably use more tractor trailer. I'm not saying they wouldn't use any. They would probably use more trucks to cut down on deliveries.
Isn't the answer there'll be less of an obstruction if they could park their truck by the curb rather than in the middle of the street? Isn't that the answer?
That's exactly right.
The committee, any other comments?
Okay, let's open it up then.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. So one is, I just looked up the sign on Google Maps, and what it shows is south of NYIT, there's a no standing 8 to 6 except authorized vehicles, and it says Parks Department vehicles. So it seems that Parks Department is authorized to park west of the sign, and it says east of the sign is truck loading only, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And my question is, rather than being bullied and say that, if you don't give us this loading zone, we're going to illegally double park. What are the options for parking on Broadway and creating a loading zone on Broadway, so it's not on a residential street? And why is that not in the consideration, but instead we're getting bullied that if you don't give this to us, we're going to illegally double park?
It's not being bullied. They're running the business.
So the problem with Broadway is that they can't park at the corner of Broadway, they have to park further down the block, which.
Well, it creates, I mean, then you have more deliveries being rolled along your streets.
Wait. The person with the microphone is supposed to be speaking.
So, I mean, Sarah basically said it, so.
I couldn't hear Sarah.
Okay, so they can't put the loading zone right at the corner, so it would have to be further north. And the problem with that is you then have obstruction on Broadway, pulling all the way around to 61st Street.
Like they're rolling the delivery, as they unload the truck, then you're rolling all
They're
that
rolling
stuff
it
all the way around the corner.
Yeah.
On a busy street.
It's
There's more
also my
potential for
understanding,
making
maybe,
noise, taking
my
longer.
understanding that there's very few, maybe 1 or 2 in the whole district that have loading zones on Broadway. I don't know if DOT wants to weigh in on that. The vast majority are side streets for loading zones.
And why can it not be on the corner?
Can DOT weigh in?
There are loading zones on Broadway, but not of such great magnitude as what you are requesting for the tractor trailer. But they are commercial paid loading zones.
And why can it not be on the corner? Why does it have to be further north?
Well, it's exactly what you had said. It's exactly what you had indicated. There's safety concerns, and with, taking the materials, around the corner. That's one of the reasons, that we looked at as well.
That's fine.
And pedestrian traffic is just difficult, right? They're gonna be making turns into 61st Street, there's all kinds of pedestrians, it's just not feasible.
Okay, we're taking one at a time from the audience.
I am very concerned, it's very concerning that Target isn't here. I don't think they're really taking us very seriously if they can't even send a representative to discuss this with us. And you're answering the questions, but I'm not sure you know all the answers. I'm concerned about the time frame. In the middle of the night, you know that those, if the items are not taken out of the truck by a certain time, it's going to be extended. And I would just like to say that a representative from Target should be speaking to us because it shows that they really don't have concern.
Okay, well, to answer your question that we already answered was the delivery times. That's right there as they state.
It says maybe. It doesn't
Wait,
say
we're
it's
gonna-
not right.
I'm gonna
It says
have-
4 a.m.
And they don't know. Until they operate, they won't know
Exactly,
precisely.
they don't know.
And that's what they would say
And
if
we
they were
don't
here.
know.
They don't know precisely.
I'm gonna bring the mic around so.
I have one question, and that is, can we get a guarantee that if this doesn't work, we'll close it up next year without coming back here?
What does that mean? I'm not
In other
sure.
words, if you can't keep to what you're saying you're going to do, will you close up your operation so that
Which part of what we're gonna do, we won't,
you're talking about deliveries.
yes.
You're putting all these times in, all these the various types of vehicles that are coming. Okay, and what happens if these numbers turn out not to be correct, like we have with Trader Joe? I mean, why aren't you willing to say, okay, this is what we think is the best way, and since we can't do it the best way, in order, because we really respect the community, then we're gonna just close up shop.
I would have confidence in Target that they have several locations in New York City and all the boroughs, and they're a good neighbor, and they are committed, as I mentioned, as they stated, to have someone, a full-time contact to work with CB7. I already said it, it's here, they will try their best. What's the other slide?
I'm going to ask people to state their names so we can put it in the minutes.
Good neighbor.
State your name.
Yes, my name is Steve Yasinowski. I'm the president of the Beaumont condominium. We have a building that is directly across the street from the loading dock with our residential entrance, and directly across the street for the NYIT entrance to the driveway that will be the residential side of 15 West 61st Street. This group that is here, our fellow residents, our board members, we're all here to protest and speak in opposition to this loading zone, as well as the hours that you're seeing up there on the board. We basically are opposed to this for three basic reasons. The first being safety. We have great concern. Great concern about the safety of our residents. The safety is, and we have a slide presentation I want to show you some of the pictures that we've been taking of the activities that go on our street on a regular basis. The second point is the noise levels. Frankly, telling us that there are going to be trucks offloaded and then pulling cartons and what have you from 90 feet down the street in the middle of the morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, when their grocery deliveries will be made, when their other trucks are backing up and pulling into the dock as well. It's just absolutely impossible. And then finally, the additional traffic is just the generation of what happens when you bottle up the street, which is what exactly a 55-foot by 12-foot wide truck is going to do on a street that's no more than 34-foot wide from curb to curb, is disastrous, as we are about to show you. At this time, I'd like to have one of our board members, or both board members, Donna Schwartz and really discuss.
Yes. Can I get this loaded in?
While you're doing that, could I ask, this says that general delivery hours may be ultimately 4 a.m. to 12 a.m., but then it says right below that, you'll try your best to limit deliveries between 12 a.m. and 5 a.m., which is includes the 4 hours that you're saying the delivery hours won't be. So the delivery hours that you're saying there won't be.
Hold on. They don't know the exact times yet. This is what they've delivered in the past in other locations. And there's very little between 12 and, there is no 12 and 4.
Yeah, but then right under it, it says you'll try your best to limit between 12 and 5.
Yes.
Which is includes the 4 hours that you say that there won't be deliveries.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Right, which is the most important time everyone's concerned about. It's the middle of the night.
They're just saying like they're gonna focus on that time to not have delivery.
Right.
Not delivery.
Try their best. It's,
You know what's gonna happen is there's gonna be a traffic jam, there's gonna be an accident, they're gonna end up there late. You know that's gonna happen.
May I speak? All right, so hello, everybody. I'm Donna Schwartz. I am also from the Beaumont. I'm on the board. What we just saw were drawings and charts and maps, and they gave us one view of what's going on. What we're going to show you is some actual views of what it really looks like. So this is an actual 55-footer. That's exactly where the loading zone would be. You can see that there's boxes in back of it. So,
in fairness, this is for our construction of our building. This is not,
okay.
This is not Target.
It's not Target, but but the size of the truck is a 55-footer, so it's comparable.
I can't verify that. No.
Okay. Well, it is, okay. Okay, we can safely say this is representative. It may not be exact. So what we are asking about is that the impact, that's what we really want to talk about, and that it really does change, for the worse, our quality of life. It creates new issues of safety, noise, and air pollution that we don't have today. And the traffic congestion, it's a complete mess for that. And so what we are asking you to do, what we're asking the board, is to maintain the balance of the residential, cultural, and commercial use of this district, which is very special because we know we have Lincoln Center there, and to deny the 70-foot loading zone on the street, and that we need to have real hours that we can live with that are not just established, but that they're enforced. So here's some building facts in terms of who's going to be affected. So the Beaumont is our building, number of units, number of residents. We estimated this is not exact, but it's just to give you an idea of what's going on. The Beaumont, the Sophia, and the Park Loggia are all on 61st Street. The Regent is on 60th, but they also faced 61st Street, and they will be affected. So we're talking about impacting around 2,500 people, 4 buildings, and there's also a parking garage. So I'm going to turn it over to Joan, who's going to talk about safety, and then we're going to show you some pictures.
Hi there, I'm Joan Murray, current Vice President of the Beaumont Board, former President. So I've been through this kind of thing before. Before I actually go into these charts, I have a question I'd like you all to keep in your mind while I and then Steve again are talking. What would Target do if the loading zone were denied and they had to put all of their deliveries down the loading dock, which is what we always thought would happen, and furthermore, were not permitted to bring trucks down the street that was so wide that they prevented any other traffic from passing? And that's something I know Steve is going to address very effectively. So, just looking at these charts for a moment, we think that Target needs to be a good neighbor. If they're going to stay on our street, they want to be on our street, they have to be good neighbors. The congestion that would come about with a huge truck carting boxes off the back of it and then 90 feet down a residential sidewalk to the loading zone, to the loading dock. That's what happens. We measured that. It is 90 feet from the back of a truck parked in the loading zone to the loading dock. Prevents pedestrians from passing and so on. Congestion traffic also makes the street access unsafe, which we've said, and trucks which idle, which they do when they're unloading, contribute to air pollution. Are you going to split for me, or you want me to push the button? I'll push for you. Yeah, that's all right. Okay. Take it easy. Just take it easy. The cacophony of noise will be unbelievable. We're really concerned about that. No, I'm on the wrong chart. Something happened to the charts. Here, you skipped a chart. Okay, there it is. Okay, we're on the right chart now. The cacophony of noise is really going to be outrageous, and the proposed delivery hours, which one way or another span the space from 4 a.m. to 12 a.m., are much too disruptive and unacceptable on our street. Thank you. The street is already congested. It's the first possible left turn below West 66 to travel east. Congestion pricing is only going to make it worse. And the gridlock is going to prevent entering and leaving the various driveways, including the driveway in your own building. Okay, the backups will clearly interfere with the bike lane, among all the other reasons we don't like them. Gridlock traffic makes the intersections on 61st and Columbus and 61st and Broadway hazardous, and it will dominate the whole street. No, gets you. Okay,
All
back to
right.
Donna.
So these are just some open questions, some of which we appreciate that you've attempted to answer. So thank you for that. But we're very concerned about things like how long does it take to unload a truck? And will the truck stand idle in the loading zone, and how long will they actually occupy that? So these are some questions that you can see that we haven't been informed about. And so when a major retailer like Target moves in, like, for example, what's the plan for garbage? Is there going to be, containers on the street? How often? Now we're talking about more garbage trucks. So we're a little concerned that these are open questions that we even have to ask them. So we wanted to show you this. We've annotated this, so I took some liberty. The main thing that you should see on this is that 90-foot zone. So you can see the loading zone on the lower right-hand side. And then what they're going to do is they're going to unload the boxes, and then they're going to cart them to the end of that arrow and into the existing loading dock. You can see that it goes in front of the Park Loggia residential entrance, as well as their circular driveway, which is very beautiful, by the way. But I don't know how cars are going to use it, because it's going to be gridlock on that street. There's also, someone was asking exactly where it is and why it's not on the corner. There's a fire hydrant there, and we understand there has to be at least 10 feet clearance between a fire hydrant and a truck loading zone. We're also concerned, though, that emergency vehicles aren't going to be able to pass down the street. So directly on the opposite side of the loading zone, on the other side of the street, that's where the Parks Departments park their cars. So that strip right there is very, very narrow and dangerous. So just some other quick facts. We were told initially that Target would be an urban store, which it's about 10,000 feet more than that. And these are just some other facts that we've already talked about. Let's get to the pictures. So this is the same picture, but you can see the boxes there. I'm going to go quickly. This is the existing loading dock. So we understand it's double wide. 2 trucks can go in here at once. Our concern is that the trucks, I think, either need to back in or out. So what happens? Do they have to stop the traffic on the street? When that happens, that's going to cause all kinds of backup all the way up Columbus, maybe even in front of Lincoln Center. I mean, it could be a very difficult situation. Here's the school bus. You can see what happens. So the school bus is coming down the street, and now here the school bus is stopping in the middle of the street, letting the kids off. And this is extremely dangerous because the kids have to get off between the cars. This is a day in our life now. Okay, so this is the approximate area where the loading zone would be. It's a little bit further down than it actually is. It kind of stops right where that flag is, but you can already see and feel the narrowness of that street. So this is a little different than seeing it in maps. So this was, Steve is going to explain this. This was yesterday.
Yeah, I'm going to take you through a real life.
I just have to warn
Sure.
you, we have an enormous agenda.
I understand.
We're at the very end.
Right at the end.
Gentlemen, this is pretty important to us.
This is the very crux of everything right here. This happened yesterday afternoon. It was raining, as you can see. An ambulance came down the street, lights flashing, siren going, and it was in response to a 16 West 61st Street, which is the next building over from us. They had to stop there. There was no place to pull over. So the ambulance stopped. It stopped in the middle of the street. And that's where it stayed for the next 15, 20 minutes. The EMT professionals got out, ran into the building, did whatever they had to do. And during that time, this is what happened. Photo 2, the photo in the middle, shows you the kind of backup that occurred at that corner. As you can see, there is no place for pedestrians to walk across the street. There's no place for the bicycles to go through on the bicycle lane. And then the third photograph shows you exactly what the reaction of all of the drivers were. If you can see the individual that is off to the right there, he is literally flashing, waving, trying to get the cars to back up, which they did. They all backed up into Columbus with Columbus traffic going downhill, down the street, making it a very dangerous situation. That is what we expect is going to be a standard operating procedure because of the fact that when you put a 55-foot truck at the end of the street, you are bottling it up so that there's very little room to move across. At this point, yeah, our final slide is that we're asking that you please maintain the balance of our residential neighborhood. You deny this loading zone and you establish some reasonable hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I did speak. So,
Sarah?
just for clarification, community board cannot restrict, we don't have the authority to restrict trucks turning on any street, nor do we have the authority to say, once a loading zone exists, who can use it and when they use it.
I mean, I guess I'm wondering what you think the alternative would be. Like,
Yeah,
if you
that's
think
what
that
we're wondering.
then there would be just residential, like just private car parking in that area, because it's not going to be a two-way street or a two-lane street ever.
The concept
So-
is they have a loading dock.
No, I understand, but my point is even if you don't have a loading zone there, you're going to have cars parked there.
We have cars.
It's still, I mean,
A car versus a 12-foot wide truck is a
but
major
I mean,
difference.
but it's not going to be another lane of traffic. So the idea that, you know, there's only one lane and so people can't get through, that's always going to be the case on the street. Personally, I think that a good solution for the street would be just to have no parking at all on that block, on either side of the street.
You can make it. Parks
But
Department
give them a
all
loading
the
zone.
way.
But give them the loading zone.
Okay, we're gonna limit, if you've already spoken, you're not gonna let you speak again, we're gonna limit this to 8 o'clock, so we're gonna call on community members right now.
Community member.
And then we'll do the community board and then we'll.
Right. Monica Blum, Lincoln Square Bid. First of all, I really have to commend the developer because I think they came to Community Board 7 almost a year ago because I remember saying, if you want us to come, let us know. And we never anticipated that there would be this kind of opposition. I understand residents are concerned, but they signed a lease. You're going to have trucks. We think that this is the best solution. Broadway is not an acceptable solution. I think you probably noticed 62nd Street and Broadway. Once again, there's a Con Ed steam problem there. Happens all the time. There is an underground problem at that location. It is not an alternative that would work. There's going to be construction 1 block south. A major building, my building where my office is coming down, and that's going to be a construction site for probably 3 years. And it's possible that there'll be lots of closures that DOT will have to address. In terms of congestion pricing, one of the things that we are going to ask DOT, and maybe you should weigh in as well, is that they look at the changes they've made in the neighborhood, because some of them are not the best changes. They've changed the traffic directions 3 or 4 times. I've been here 22 years, and Andrew, you and I met when they changed 61st Street for the first time. That was 21 years ago. So I think that as part of congestion pricing, DOT should work with the community board and all of us to look at the side street traffic. And congestion zone may not be on 61st Street. It's south of 60th is where it has to be. So there are many, many other things that can be looked at. As far as we're concerned, there was a loading zone across the street. I think Martin is correct, because I think that's left from when we had EMS. There was a large retailer on the south side of that street. They were quite large, and they had deliveries all the time. So I think that, yes, they did.
I've lived there for 35 years.
You know, I've done these presentations
And I've
many
lived there for
times.
35 years, so
Many
please don't
times,
tell me
and
what was on that street.
This is just the most, I find it incredible that the way this is, the way the community.
Could someone else
but-
speak, ma'am?
Yeah, but I'm gonna
Thank
finish
you.
and say that I support this, the bid supports it, and DOT is gonna make the decision. They've looked at this. I think they feel this is where it should be. And, you know, I live near loading zones too, so we all have to deal with those things. This is a better solution than trucks in the middle of the street. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple more people.
We're going to, I'm going to bring the mic around, and we're going to stop the public discussion at 8, and then the board will deliberate.
We'll start with you, and then we'll go back to you.
Ma'am,
Say your name, please.
Mr. Downey, Robert Downey, not that guy. I was around before he was. What troubles me a little bit is the developer being talked about how kind and nice they are. For the last 3 years, we've had one lane of traffic. A lot of times during construction, this developer could have let us have 2 lanes. You're absolutely stuck. We're, by the way, in the Sophia. You're absolutely stuck endlessly when cars try to take a right onto Broadway and there's only 1 lane, so you can't even get across to Central Park West. So to me, this developer should have made efforts during the last 3 years to show goodwill to this community, and they have not. It's been impossible to use our street, and now it's going to get worse. Thank you.
My name is Joy Campagna, and I'm a resident of the Sophia. I'm a lawyer, and I do a lot of mediation, so I understand that there are power imbalances that we need to take into account here. So my comments are actually to the board, and I just would wish that you might hold off on resolving this until we can have all of the parties that we need at the table here, because we are missing target. I believe strongly that this second meeting has involved a great deal of time going towards Martin, answering the same questions that we already had answers to the first time we had a meeting. And so there was one person represented here representing interests of Avalon, and not time for there to be a full hearing of how people view this, nor do we have all the parties at the table. So I'm very hopeful that the committee board will consider postponing once again until we have all the parties present, and until there is an opportunity for there to be a greater expression of how people are seeing things.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, just in response to that, there were a number of questions from the last meeting, and we asked Target all those questions, and they provided them an answer. No, I'm not stopping. I'm explaining. And we addressed all those questions one by one. So there's not a myriad of questions that are still unexplained.
Hi, I'm Joanna Eagle. I have a question and then a comment. Obviously, we're all very upset, and I think probably rightfully so. But we're also in a situation where we're stuck at this point, it sounds like. So then the question is about this loading zone, right? So one of the things in the Beaumont presentation said that there was this fire hydrant, so no, nothing could be. But isn't that the exact location where there's supposed to be a taxi stand?
That's in front of it. In front of it, 10 feet in front of it.
Okay, so I wonder, and I don't know exactly how this would work, but I'm throwing it out there as some for other people who really do know these things to solve. But perhaps we could put the taxi stand on Broadway. Perhaps we could extend some sort of thing with the loading zone to make it larger so that we would have, I understand people are upset about the trucks and this, but we're going to have the trucks. So if we can extend.
Block the fire hydrant.
But maybe there's like a red line where the trucks can't go here, but they can go there and here. Again, I don't.
So it's Colleen from DOT. So we did reduce the taxi stand to accommodate the loading zone. We did reduce the taxi stand to accommodate the loading zone. I mean, if you have an alternative location that you want us to look at to relocate it, we'll be more than happy to do that.
How much would you gain by putting that
Not
up?
much.
Not much?
One more comment. One more. Right here.
I'm just wondering what the loading dock is used for. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Karen Hartman, and I'm at the Sophia. And I'm wondering what the loading dock, the one that was built in the building to the left of the building on 61st Street, what is that going to be used for?
That will be used for deliveries as well. But it can only accommodate a 35-foot truck.
Good, that's great.
Two.
And they will use it.
That's funny.
They will be used.
Two 35-foot trucks is like 170, so you should be fine.
You mean side by side?
Yeah.
Yes.
Terry Mashler from the Sophia. Having two 35-foot trucks loading from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. is noise enough without a 55-foot truck. It's just too much. And it's a narrow street, congestion, the first left turn to go on the east side. It's too much for one street. You're selling $6 million apartments. I can't even imagine someone buying them there now.
They don't know.
They don't know.
They will know.
We have to tell them.
They will know.
Maybe we won't pick it.
We have to tell them.
Why won't they know? Why will that not be disclosed to these people who are going to be spending that kind of money? Shouldn't they have to sign something so that they sign off on it and they know in advance of what they're buying?
We stay on the,
Why don't we go to the committee and committee concerns, and then we'll have a resolution. Okay, Ken.
I just have a question for the people from the block. Have you thought about what reasonable hours mean? Would you have some suggestions for us?
We absolutely have.
Okay.
We had a letter published and 80 of our occupants at the Beaumont signed it, suggesting that the hours in the morning start at 6 a.m., not 4 a.m. And likewise, that it not go too late at night. I don't know the exact numbers, but definitely we did discuss that and we were very willing to have them deliver. What we don't understand is why can't they just use the 35-foot trucks, the loading dock, and forget about the big trucks on a tiny little street? That's what we don't get. And nobody has convinced me that I'm wrong.
The simple answer is they need it as part of their operation. Very simple.
How is the decision made? What size truck?
Can I just remind both the committee and the committee, we have no authority over this whatsoever. We have no ability to restrict any trucks or any times or any traffic pattern like that whatsoever. So we should put it to
parking and direction.
we can do parking, and to the extent you want parking and the trucks on the street, there's an argument that it's going to be more congested. So let's try to. This is obviously something that is going to cause noise and disruption on the street. So let's think what we can do, not what we can't do. What we can do to make it better.
And this is going to be board members talking. Tell us. And not discussion, not passing on.
So
Okay.
if we could ask, Martin, is the building so far along that a loading zone on a loading entrance on Broadway is now not possible?
It's true, unfortunately.
Correct. You mean to have a new loading dock come on Broadway? Not possible.
Not possible.
It's already constructed.
But they could
Anyone else from the committee?
The discussion now is.
I'll ask a question of the, what I actually am more concerned about is the additional car traffic that's going to be, will come with the congestion pricing. And I think it's an important point that it's a first left-hand turn from
66
Street down to 61st Street. Have you considered other streets that have changing direction on other streets? I haven't looked at the map. Is that something that you would consider?
So, I mean, at the moment, I don't know if we would consider changing direction. If the community board wants us to look at it, we'll be more than happy to look at it. But
We
at the
can't hear
moment,
him.
there's not much that I can tell you about congestion pricing until we come to the boards and we have more information to share. But I think it would be a bit premature right now to consider changing the direction of the street because of this.
Rich?
Yeah, do you want me to have the mic?
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, the underlying issue here is that 61st Street is a residential street and it cannot accommodate a major high volume retailer. And even if this is as of right, it's incredibly unfair to the residents to put a huge high volume retailer in the middle of a residential block. Also, Target has already signaled they won't be a good neighbor. They didn't even show up tonight. They also said in the slides, as good neighbors, they will try their best to limit deliveries between the hours of 12 a.m. and 5 a.m. which are the hours that they directly said on the same slide that they're not going to be making deliveries.
Right.
Also, Martin is threatening that if we don't approve this loading zone, they're going to come on the street anyway, and they're just going to double park and block the
It's not
street.
right. It's a statement of a fact, Rich, and we have to try to make things better. These are the facts. They signed a lease. It's done. They're coming.
Yeah.
So how do we make it as unobtrusive as possible?
So,
That's the issue.
yeah, and I agree. We have a bad actor and a bad situation. What's the best thing that we can do to deal with the situation?
Actually, I don't know if DOT is willing to look at this, but because of congestion pricing and because of this project, it may be time to revisit the no turn down Broadway from southbound Columbus at the bow tie. I think that's going to put a lot more traffic down here than might be necessary. You know, it's buses only that can make that turn now. Yes, we should look at that.
I just wanted you to say it again for the minutes. No
Yeah,
turn.
there is no left turn down Broadway from southbound Columbus currently unless you're the M7 bus.
I would like to propose a resolution to approve on the condition that there be no deliveries before 6 a.m. and that there be no parking elsewhere on the street.
But my question, Ken, is how do we enforce that?
Enforceability.
It's just part of our resolution.
Yeah, but if it's not enforceable, what's the point?
Yeah, it's a meaningless resolution.
Is
Well, then, we're only an advisory group anyway, so all of our resolutions are.
Mark is behind you.
Thank you. I do have a couple of thoughts. One which is going to get back to Sarah's idea, and I want to give full credit to it, about whether parking can continue to be a part of this, especially when congestion pricing makes this more of a thoroughfare than it is. And I completely get that it's a residential block, but the reality that a high volume retailer is entering this block is apparently way beyond our control. And so the only question is, how do we make that better? I think one way we make that better is Sarah's idea about parking, although I don't know what happens to all those Parks Department cars. That's a realistic use.
Penny says many of them have found another home already.
Okay, well, and that's, and you know, necessity sometimes creates that. Because the ambulance slide was really very instructive, and that's something that, with or without a semi on the thing, I mean, our board has advocated for loading zones in many different parts of this community, and I continue to think that that is a very important part of managing what it's like to have retail and residential cheek to jowl in the way that Manhattan requires us to do. What's more, and even though fortunately or unfortunately Target isn't going to be a brick and mortar right on the street, we have lots and lots of examples of empty storefronts. So a retailer that's coming to our neighborhood and investing in us is something that we have to accommodate without killing our residential tenants. So I think that the answer has to involve a number of steps, and I'm not sure if you want all of them in one resolution, but I think the steps include the elimination of parking on the south side of the street so that there is a conduit, that you have to take another look at what Andrew was saying about the southbound turn off of Columbus onto Broadway. And I think you have to take another look at the inability to make a left turn on 64th Street from southbound Broadway / Columbus, which because that is what requires folks to do kind of a loop-the-loop, which I think requires this block.
Yes.
Because I don't think there's any other way to do it other than Columbus Circle itself, and God bless if that's your answer. Anyway, I think those are the elements you want to consider.
I just have one very quick thing to
Excuse
say.
me, sorry. I'm sorry, this is just board discussion now.
Okay.
I opened up with that. I started the conversation tonight saying that we did talk to Target. They were very reassuring. They're going to be great neighbors. They're going to be accessible. They're
And we're
going to
going
be
to
here
have a
tonight.
name of a human being who's responsible for their actions.
Who's going to be here tonight? No, I specifically asked if they hired him. He said, yes, it's going to be the manager. He said, he's the best manager in Manhattan. They absolutely said that. Okay, so there is no videotape of the phone call. My internet here. Be that as it may, we're spending a lot of time talking to ourselves. Without Target, There's really nothing to be done. Can we get Target here next month? I was told we could get them here this month.
They were very forthcoming. They said they have not hired their manager yet. The two people that we were on the phone with were from the Middle East, Midwest rather. Who knows?
Yeah.
And
That's one for the program.
I think that we have a resolution that's very workable, that,
A resolution? Well, I don't think
Ken proposed a resolution.
I
Mark
second it.
kind of,
I second it.
Mark supplemented it.
May I ask Colleen if that is an enforceable possibility to say no trucks on a particular street during particular hours?
You can't.
You can't.
We could,
Well, there are times for loading zone, yes. I mean, we're more than happy to work with Target around in the community with the specified loading zone, you know, whether the community wants it later, but that's something that Avalon and Target will have to work out with your loading operations.
so that could be part of the resolution.
And if they needed to do earlier deliveries, they do have the loading dock.
Right.
Yeah.
And I will note that double parking is illegal, so feel free to call 311 whenever that happens.
I'm sure the 2 will work with us on it.
Yeah. Any other comments from the committee on the proposed
On the
resolution?
resolution.
My own question is, I guess, thank you, is on the southbound side of the street, what is the procedure to eliminate parking, which would then, I guess, effectively open up a flow-through lane of traffic so that.
Should we put that in the resolution?
So I think it's important that the community board puts that in the resolution
Yes.
because we will look at it, and once we get that resolution, you know, we'll let you know.
Great.
You know, our recommendations.
Okay, so
But
that's in the
committee can't
resolution.
do that.
It's a friendly amendment.
They'll help.
It has to be, I'm sorry, it has to be no standing, not no parking.
We have no. So two questions and a comment. One is, what exactly is the resolution? Second is, I think we put a lot of effort into looking at the bow tie and the safety issues around the entire area. And there was talk about, Mark mentioned the idea of allowing left turns onto 64th Street. I think we need to be, and Ken mentioned the idea of allowing left turns from Columbus onto Broadway. Or, I'm sorry, Andrew. I think we need to be incredibly careful that we're not reopening safety issues in order to allow.
I didn't mention 64th Street, I just mentioned going down Broadway.
Yeah, so.
Well, Ken will recite the resolution because it's his resolution, but I think what it's going to say is the DOT should look at the whole surrounding area for any improvement it could make to improve traffic flow without impairing safety.
We're not
And
going
then,
to tell
then the
DOT
last
what
question
to do.
is, I know that there are rules about super long trailers. Are 55-foot trailers, what are the restrictions on 55-foot trailers just in general? Are they limited to certain streets? Are they allowed on Columbus, on 61st Street? What are the rules with these trailers?
You know what, that's a good question. I mean, we do have locations where we've worked with Target, where we've installed loading zones as well as places like, I want to say Trader Joe's, where they, or Whole Foods that have trailers that come in to make deliveries. I mean, I'll be honest with you, we have an office of freight and mobility. They work very closely with a lot of these tractor trailers when they come into the city in terms of providing routes which they should take and what safety measures they should look for. So, I mean, it's fair to say that, you know, that it is permitted, you know, especially, and given that it's a residential block, I know the sensitivity of it, but in all honesty, if you don't have the loading zone, what you will end up having is double parking, which is something I don't think anybody wants on the street.
How can you allow that if it's illegal?
This is only board, I'm sorry.
Understand, but
This is
can I
board.
make a point of
No,
clarification?
no,
It
no,
has to
no,
do with
you cannot.
Okay. Ken, would you restate your
Or do you
resolution?
want, I wrote something here if you want.
Okay, Sarah.
Do you want me to this is what I sort of tried to gather from everyone. Resolution to approve on the condition that there be no deliveries before 6 a.m. and no other parking on the block on either the south or north side of the street. The board also requests that DOT look at the whole surrounding area for any improvement it could make to traffic flow without sacrificing safety. Parenthetical, including taking another look at the southbound turn off Columbus onto Broadway and an inability to make a left onto 64th Street from southbound Broadway Columbus.
Great.
Wait, Ken, is that?
Yeah, I'm not happy about the traffic changes, but we're just saying.
We're not
just taking a
proposing,
look.
we're just looking at it.
I think Mark has a comment.
Actually, the resolution as recited, the one thing I was going to add is that if you're going to look at those changes in direction, you should also look at the facing of lights to make sure that there is a safe face. I think that covers it, so, yes. Okay, call the question. All those in favor of the resolution is all committee members in favor of the resolution?
Okay. Are we ready to vote?
We're
Yeah,
voting.
okay. Come on, Richard, are you voting? No. One,
Give me
2,
2 minutes.
3, 4, 5.
All those opposed? 1. All those abstaining? 1. So the resolution passes. Non-committee members?
5101, because he's abstaining for class.
All those in favor?
Right.
All those opposed?
No. Sorry, non-committee board members.
0. Any abstaining? No. Okay, the resolution passes. We have our work cut out for us.
Shame on you.
Shame on you all.
Shame on you. Narrow street.
Okay, so next up, 410 Central Park West, 101st Street. Question, Ms. Kidman?
Please move out. Thank you for attending. Please move out.
You'll have to excuse me, but 35 years, taxi stand has never been used as anything more than taxi pulling in and eating your lunch. That's
I'm sorry. I
Please welcome, coming, everyone please done, please, when you come and serve your outside, people continue.
Yeah.
Please have your conversation inside. Leave your conversation to the hallway, please.
Yes. Okay, we have a quick presentation from 410 Central Park West, which is first.
Hi, my name is Beth Sossin. I'm a board member at 410 Central Park West. We have a very simple little problem that has become a safety issue for us, and we would love you to help us address it. It started more than 6 months ago when we've had sick residents with ambulances trying to get in to pick them up and not being able to get into the door. And looking into the problem, we found that it was one person who tended to be parked literally in front of the awning. And we tried addressing with him to give us some space so that emergency people could come through. And all he did was be belligerent, put signs on his windows, cursed at us. It was just terrible. And as much as I'd like you to do an ordinance for police, I know you won't do that. But I think it is a big safety issue for emergency. We're asking for a no standing zone so that we have enough space for emergency vehicles to come through, for walkers or accessorized people to get through. That's all we're asking for. And if you have another solution, we're totally open to it. Did I get it right?
I'm in favor.
Yes, there's several people with disabilities who can't get through with wheelchairs or walkers because, I mean, literally we're talking 2 inches, sometimes less.
I'm just wondering why you're asking for no standing rather than no parking, because no parking, you're allowed to drop off passengers. No standing, you're not allowed to drop off passengers.
We'll do, because we're ignorant.
Oh, okay.
I think
So
that's
no
the
parking, so I'd be in favor of no parking, but no standing is too restrictive.
I'm sorry, is it a parking zone now?
Yes. Yeah, it's just parking. It's
Yeah.
just like rest,
Straight
it's just like
parking,
free
yeah,
parking.
right.
Yeah.
So what is gonna stop one of the many nationwide delivery services from occupying that and?
That's why we need loading zones on Central Park West.
But
no, we were told we can't have them.
And that's why, our commissioner, before he went in his honeymoon, he has a letter. He has a letter that he's signing, he's supposed to sign to send to the community board, because we have identified quite a few spots for loading zones, and y'all should be getting one.
See, she said y'all because she's from Southern New York State.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Colleen, the question, is there such a thing as if we put in a no parking zone, it's going to, somebody with a vehicle can park in there that has a red placard. So is there such a thing as a no spinning, no whatever zone that is literally 4 feet wide? Not big enough for a car, just big enough to get a wheelchair in and out.
No.
Why? Why not? You're not taking away a whole parking
No,
spot then.
the thing is that you want to take away a whole parking spot because you want a vehicle to be fit, to be able to fit there. What if there's an excess ride that has to pick up passengers from the building?
Yeah.
You want the space to be sufficient so a vehicle can fit there, one vehicle. So if we were to give the no parking, it would be for one space.
How many spaces you're looking for?
One.
Oh, one. Okay, I have a resolution.
What's the length of this?
It's
One
parking space.
20 feet.
20 feet?
25
feet?
Is this a 24-hour rule?
That's a big car.
That is a big car.
I propose a resolution.
So there has to be a little bit of.
Howard, can I just ask a question? Are we talking about in front of, on Central Park West, in front of 410?
Right.
Are we saying the first spot south of 101st Street?
No, that spot right in front
Or-
of the awning.
Okay,
Literally
so
in
there'd
front
be
of
a
the
spot, then
There's,
an empty
you could-
space.
You could actually park 2 cars in front of the awning and probably 2 cars in back of the awning.
No, I think, because you can't park all right next to the curb. Like, you can't park by the curb.
So you definitely have 2 spots in front of the awning.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know where the 20 feet is, but a normal car situation.
Are you thinking we should just get rid of it to the corner?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a weird spacing of having 1 or 2 spots, then a gap, then 1 or 2 spots in the hydrant.
DOT can make that
They'll figure
decision.
it out.
They're asking for having 1 spot removed.
What are the hours of this condition? Is it going to be all
24/7.
24/7?
24/7.
Call the question to propose that there be a no parking zone as requested, with the DOT removing additional parking if they see fit. All those in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
All those opposed? All those abstaining? 1. Non-committee members, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3. All those, 4, sorry. All those opposed? All those abstaining? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Excuse me, point of order.
Yep.
Why is it that when we asked to put a sign by the Manhattan Day School with certain hours so that you could park there after 2 o'clock on Fridays, we were told, no, you can't do that, DOT won't? I'm just telling you what.
Not exactly a point of order, this is a question.
I don't know. Point of order. Okay, let's keep it moving. We have a big meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
2642 Broadway, Carmel, car and
You already did
limousines.
that. Oh, you-
Yeah.
That was what we just,
But
Is anyone here from New Family Radio Dispatch? Okay,
New Family.
they didn't no show. Daylighting 97th and West End. Who's here to speak for that?
If no community member is, I will.
Okay, let's see.
Oh, speak up.
what's your name?
My name is John West. Live at 250 West 94th Street. Have for a long, long time. And we think there's an opportunity to improve access to Riverside Corner.
I think this is the later one.
No, it's the same thing.
At both 95th and
I
97th
think this
Streets.
is.
And it's all explained on the handout.
I don't think that's the item that's on the agenda right now. We're talking about 97th and West End.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, call me back.
He's talking about number 8.
Oh,
crossing. Hold on.
Is anyone here for daylighting in 97th Street and West End Avenue?
So I've been in touch with them, and I think they couldn't make it. I think it was one of their anniversaries and other issues, but I can talk to this issue. So after Cooper Stock was killed, because a cab came down 97th Street, made a left turn onto West End, and Cooper Stock was walking hand in hand with his father with the light, the cab wasn't able to see them because cars parked at the corner, at the, I guess it's the southeast corner, were blocking view of pedestrians crossing West End. DOT daylighted that corner and put up bollards to make sure that vehicles would not park in that area, so that cars turning left, and there's a good amount of traffic turning left from 97th Street onto West End, would see pedestrians as they're crossing the block. So that area is daylighted right now. DOT did put up those bollards and also painted it beige to really signal that it's a no standing zone. What's happened in the meantime, and these residents keep sending me pictures, is that the Paris, which is the building on that corner, keep instructing loading trucks to use that as a loading zone. And also UPS uses it as a loading zone, and I've even seen SUVs from the 24th precinct parked in that spot. So instead of this being a no standing zone, it's become a loading zone with big trucks that are much more obstructive of views of pedestrians crossing what we know is an imminent safety issue.
This is at 97.
At 97th Street and West End.
Just balance.
That's what I was wondering.
So either they're driving over them or they're backing into it.
Those are the flexible bollards?
Oh, yeah. So I see this, and I agree with the people who've been coming to me as an imminent safety issue. DOT has already daylighted the issue, but it's not working.
It's an safety issue, I agree.
And
is it like a bump out with the bollards defining a curb extension? Is that what it is?
At 97th West End?
Yeah, 97th and West
To
End.
put a gigantic planter in there?
Yes, it's something. It's either a gigantic planter
Planter would be nice.
Well-
or extend the curb. Yeah, or extend the curbs that they'd be parking on the curb, but it's something more than what it currently exists is urgently needed, because we've already had one fatality because of this issue.
We've addressed that intersection many times.
And what's there right now ain't working. And the idea that it's intentionally being, go ahead, Mark.
The curb extension was the right answer. It's simply that somebody's literally driving over it. That's like.
So we have to harden that.
But
So make it.
yeah, it's not a curb extension right now. It's plastic.
Right, well,
bollards.
because I assume that there's some sort of storm drain there that costs $1 gazillion to move out with a real curb.
Well, they could do what they did at my corner before they put the concrete in, where they just put the ballards and the stone planters.
Yeah.
I think the stone planters are the answer, because the bollards, they do seem to drive over.
No, they had stone planters and ballards, so.
The solid ones?
Yeah, I think, because it's not being enforced, you can look at putting granite block paper at
Perfect.
that location, because with the planter, you need
Someone to
maintain
take care of
it,
that, right.
You know, so I think it was more to just send us a letter,
Sure.
describing what you just did, Rich, and asking that we look
Great
at
idea.
putting a granite block there.
And just to back it up, we'll do a resolution to support that. So calling for the the Green Board to write a letter to the DOT to request granite blocks to ensure that cars do not violate the space.
I second that.
Can I
Okay.
just add, because of like a year and a half ago, this committee, before I was even on the board, approved the same thing at 85th and West End, and it never happened. I don't know.
Approved to what, like?
Bollards in a no standing zone at 85th and West End for daylighting purposes. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Colleen, do you know if our long ago resolution, which came as a result of Cooper Stock's death, to adjust the timing of the light at 96th and West End so that it wouldn't pay you to speed through 97th and West End to try to make the light to get to the Henry Hudson
If
Park?
I'm not mistaken, I think those lights were adjusted.
They
I think
were.
The timing was done, yeah. Yeah.
They are, they are much
Can you
better
give
than
any
they were.
sense of timing of how quickly something could happen at this intersection?
So, you know what, I know that we do have granite block pavers, we ship them around. So we might have them stored somewhere. I can find out how soon we can get one there.
That'd be
I'll
great.
check tomorrow, I'll find out.
Yep.
So it's probably better not, they don't need a resolution, but we can get a letter out in a few days.
Yeah, just get a letter, that's all.
Okay.
So we don't need a
resolution.
resolution?
Yeah, no.
No resolution.
So do we need to vote?
Great. Good solution.
Good.
I will write the letter.
Riverside Park speed limits for bikes. Who's here to speak about that?
Me.
Okay.
I'm an avid cyclist and ride often in Riverside Park. And the idea that a 4-year-old was injured recently and sent to the hospital because a cyclist was speeding and was allegedly speeding. Well, I stand by their speeding. If they weren't able to slow down in order to not hit a 4-year-old kid, they were going too fast.
Exactly.
Whatever.
And
So I want a resolution calling for, and I believe that because it's a state park, this requires a movement by Albany to set a speed limit in the park.
There's
But-
currently no speed limit?
And there's currently, my understanding is that there's not a speed limit in Riverside Park.
I don't think there is.
And there needs to be one.
To add to
And-
that, though,
And I know Ken is going to say that it's impossible to enforce because
Okay, next.
to anyone who might say that it's impossible to enforce, setting a speed limit of 10 or 15 miles per hour is reasonable. I don't think anyone's going to enforce it at 11 o'clock at night when no one's around. But at times when the
at 11
park is
o'clock,
very
there's not gonna be
congested,
4-year-olds.
exactly. At the times that the park is very congested, I think the people who are riding above 15 miles per hour, taking it easy, often have racing bikes and have speedometers. And in any way, it's a way that we can have signs posting an exact speed limit instead of saying be careful. And it's a way that the police would have the ability to enforce.
To that end,
Roberta.
so, a week ago, or week and a half ago, I got a frantic email from a woman in the 80s who was very upset about bikes speeding in Central Park. And thanks so much to Julian and to Helen's office. They were going to send 25 people to the Rotunda meeting last Thursday, which really would have been quite awful. And so instead, we promised that we would work with them on it. And to that end, I talked to Penny, and I haven't had a chance to talk to both of you, but I talked to
Whatever his name is.
Andrew. What's his name? So
The Joker.
that we want,
Yesterday's news, Andrew.
we want to have a meeting with the land use committees of Board 7, 9, and 12 with Dan Brodnick from Riverside Park and with the parks, John Harold from the parks, to discuss signage and enforcement, because declaring a speed limit is not going to help. We really need to have, Central Park has beefed up their signage tremendously.
Signage
Yeah,
helps.
signage.
And signage will
It's not
really
the be-all
help.
and end-all, but it
So
helps.
we're going to try and get the meeting, we're going to try and do a day meeting with or an early evening meeting with the land use or whoever from the 2 other boards, and just have a whole routine for all of Riverside.
And who from our board is that?
It will be our chair, our land use, our transportation chair.
So with all due respect,
Hang on.
Well, it's probably, at the first meeting, is just going to be the chairs of the boards, if we can get them together.
Well, you said transportation committee chairs.
I didn't mean transportation. We're going to see who's coming to the first meeting.
Okay, Rich.
And I did say land use, and I didn't mean land use either. But
So with all due
I did
respect-
remember Andrew's name. So that's all, something's
And she
good.
did say Middle East and meant Midwest. So
There we go. And I am dyslexic.
I do want to propose a resolution for a speed limit, and I completely disagree with Roberta because I don't think you can have signs unless you have something to say on the signs. I think the signs need to say a speed limit. And you also can't have enforcement if you have nothing to enforce, and you need a speed limit to be able to enforce speed.
You can still do that, and we're still going to have.
From a governance point of view, Riverside Park goes through many community boards. Would you not need agreement amongst all the boards that serve Riverside? Or would you just have it for CB7's part of Riverside Park?
I'm saying our point of view is that the park should have a speed limit.
And aren't we, yeah, because aren't we
The
also
park
just,
goes up to 150 some odd
this is
street.
more aspirational anyway,
it's
because it's
advisory.
not, yeah.
It's
So
advisory
we can
to-
say what we think is good and, yeah.
Yeah.
Aren't what you're talking about, what you're really concerned about is shared spaces. So there are sections, large sections of the park where cyclists have their own space, such as between 59th Street and 72nd Street. There are not supposed to be pedestrians there.
But there are other spaces where everything else is shared.
But then when you get to 72nd Street, it's an extremely shared space. And I would support this, if you're talking about a shared space. But then when you get to the Cherry Walk, that's not a shared space. Runners and walkers have their own discrete section, and cyclists have theirs. So there's no reason to limit cyclists.
Except the Cherry Walk is so narrow that bikes are constantly, I walk there all the time, and I'm constantly having to dodge.
But
bikes.
anyway, on the section, the most dangerous section, which is between 72nd and 83rd, or maybe 96, I think it should be 10 miles an hour. And anything over that is dangerous.
I agree with both of your comments.
But,
That the shared space should be 10, and yeah, I'm good with both
But to
that.
limit cyclists to 10 miles an hour on the Cherry Walk or south of 72nd is ridiculous.
Okay, wait a second. Mark, you had your hand up. Did you still want to speak?
I think more or less covered what I was going to say.
Okay,
I just
Doug.
have a question on, I am generally in favor of slowing down and, to prevent injury and, but, even though the technology exists and many bikers do have speedometers, most do not. City Bike does not have a speedometer on any of the thousands of bikes they have. How do you enforce this? How does a cyclist even know that they're going 16 miles an hour or 11?
Lance Armstrong could not get a city bike above 10 miles per hour.
He also couldn't run a not-for-profit without being corrupt, but that's a whole other.
He was very tired.
You thought everything was. Is that, I mean, I just don't know. Is that a legitimate concern, or I'm not a biker?
It's, like I said, in general, I'm in favor of it. I'm just saying, like, how do you, I mean, I know a police officer can shoot a laser and know exactly how fast the rider's going. The rider doesn't necessarily know that. How do you,
So we do have.
Mark's got his hand up.
So the thing I would add to that discussion is, and I think it's a very fair point, because you need to know you're in compliance or not, because this is effectively, you're talking about a criminal statute or a violation.
Right.
And you're supposed to be able to know whether you're violating the law. What I'll say to that in addition is this concern, that there may be instances where this is too much and instances where this is too little. Because going 10 or 11 miles an hour in a crowded area by the ball field where the little leaguers are may be irresponsible, but now we're saying we're blessing it.
That's okay.
And
Right.
conversely, there may be places where getting the heck out of Dodge at a better rate of speed, especially when you're being chased by those delivery guys with those electronic bikes who do use the greenway to and have very little regard for painted lines. So this could be over and under inclusive at the same time. That's my concern, is that we would create another situation like painted non-protected bike lanes where we would be creating a sense of safety where none actually exists.
Yeah,
that's my concern.
That guy who hit the kid could have been going 10 miles an hour.
I mean, I don't have a speedometer on my bike. I have no idea how, sitting in the closet, but when I do ride it, I have no idea how fast I'm going.
But
Yeah, I mean,
I just want to make the point
Ken,
that we
Ken,
have.
you've actually talked a couple times. Why don't you let Sarah talk?
No, it just reminds me of the conversation we had, I don't know, like 6 months ago now, maybe, about the kind of hierarchy of uses and the really what we're getting at is that everyone needs to share our spaces and do it responsibly. So I don't know how we do that exactly, but I do sort of agree with Mark's point that we
How
all
about those
want
little
less.
radar things? Caution, you're going so far.
Oh, actually, that's not a bad idea.
We have a comment from the community.
That's actually, that's a universal speedometer that.
If they could put them
Wow,
in.
that's a great idea, Andrew.
Hang on, we just caught on something.
Hi, full disclosure, I bike in the Greenway regularly. I was actually there Saturday. It was a very nice day for it.
Can you give us your name?
One of the
for the
first.
minutes?
My name is Jonathan Lindenbaum. I live at 14 West 83rd. I think honestly the issue of like everyone needs to share this space is sort of like what gets to the heart of this, which is that below 72nd it's a lot safer because the pedestrian and bike zones are completely separate, aside from the crosswalks. I think like I honestly would support a speed limit. I think it's really unsafe there for everyone, like up to 72nd and north of that. I mean north of 72nd. Sorry. But I did find an article from I think 2016 where this board considered the idea of separating out the bike space, and I think the route considered was kind of an issue because it may have been too steep at some points. But has there been any talk about that, like as a more permanent solution to this?
The Helen Rosenthal.
Yeah.
There was
Rosenthal bike path.
what we call the Helen
Memorial
Rosenthal bike path, which basically took the bikes off of the walkway
By the
by the
river.
water. But they still were on a path where children would be where people would be crossing. So it was not a perfect solution.
So there, I just have a question, a clarification. There's the water walkway, and then
Right.
there's the raised part. Which are you talking about? Or is it
Well,
one?
probably all of them.
So we're really talking about the thing along the
Those are
water.
both shared, actually.
But
The
it
top
does
one
happen
doesn't
on the
seem as
boat.
dangerous, but the bottom one seems.
Because that's where
But the one
people-
by, the upper one is also a problem at certain times of year.
I strongly support a speed limit of 10 miles an hour between 72nd and whatever, not including Cherry Walk, on the water. I've almost hit a kid when I was riding because he just darted away from his parents.
Right.
And his parents weren't aware that it was a shared path. They weren't aware that bikes were there. And it was, you know, thank God nothing happened. But they were extremely upset with me, and I was extremely happy that nothing had happened. The other thing that I think we need to think about is electric bikes. And we need speed limits for them, especially because people that use electric bikes, a lot of them can go fast without pedaling. They haven't learned how to ride at speed yet. It's like a kid getting in a Ferrari when he's 16 and, you know, smashing into a wall. So that, and we have the other issue of micro-mobility with electric wheeled things.
Yeah, right.
There's a lot of that, and everything should be limited.
Rich?
I think we should just keep this really simple. I agree with Ken that we should make it 72nd to 96 in the shared space. Responding to Mark, you could say for any road, you know, this speed limit might not be appropriate for whatever situation. That's why the police do have discretion. And I would expect that, you know, if the police ever were to set up a radar trap, that they're not going to be ticketing someone going 12 miles per hour if we set the speed limit at 10 miles per hour when there's absolutely no one in the park. This is to set, you know, to plant a flag and say we can put up signs, we can have some enforcement, which is not possible right now because there is no speed limit. And we're better off having one that's directionally accurate. In terms of bikes not all having speedometers, I'm pretty fit and I'll ride somewhere in the 10 to 15 miles per hour. If I'm really, really pushing it, getting past 15 miles per hour on flat ground on a regular bike that's not a racing bike ain't that easy. And if someone's riding a racing bike that can easily get that fast or an electric bike, then they really should have some way of knowing their speed. And the fact that they're, and if someone's able to go even 15, let alone 18, 20 miles per hour without knowing how fast they're going, they need to be have the ability of regulating and being enforced. And I think we can't consider every possible situation, nor does a speed limit on a street. We need to give general guidance to our elected officials in Albany that there's right now not a speed limit in the park. And there's no way of us having signs. To Roberta's point, we need to have signs giving a speed limit, and we need some way of enforcing that. Probably won't happen that often, but I've got kids, and my kids between 72nd Street and 96th Street, I do not feel safe having them on that area because it's too dangerous.
Yep.
I'd like to bring up the issue of pedal assist bikes from City Bike. Those are very easy to go very quickly.
Although they're gone now.
Yeah, they're gone, but they're coming back. They're coming back, and the reason they were decommissioned is because the braking mechanism of them was too strong. People were flipping over. So to that effect as well, with that in the back of your mind, if you're riding a pedal assist, and you need to put the brakes on suddenly if a kid's running out, are you going to flip over? Are you going to run over the kid? Are you going to swerve? I mean, I just think it's impossible for someone to know how quick they're going on these. I understand that we need to have a trained eye, or everyone needs to know what they're doing before they get behind a bike, but I'm just walking down the street in New York today, no one knows what they're doing on a bike. Whether they're professional drivers for restaurants, whether they're avid cyclists. I'm almost struck by bicycle almost every single day.
Okay, let me just propose
I lived at 181st and used the Parkway to commute, and I think that a protected bike lane along Riverside or West End Avenue would move a lot of the people out of the park for commuting purposes.
Yes, that would help. Anything that helps separate use.
There's no alternative.
But that's not what we have today. And so what we have is a resolution, and I will make it, to have a speed limit of, is it 10 miles an hour in the shared spaces in
Between
Riverside Park.
72nd and 96.
We could state
On the water,
specifically.
right? On the water.
Yeah,
Along
speed
the
limit
water.
no greater than 10.
Well, there's shared spaces
right,
there
no,
at the
That's
water
what a
and
speed
the
limit
park.
is.
10 minutes.
Yeah,
10 miles
very
per hour.
often speed limits are that you have to go within a certain speed.
No, this is a speed
No,
limit.
they usually put a minimum of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Reasonable.
I second that resolution.
A reasonable speed given conditions, no greater than 10 miles.
Can I ask who this resolution will go
Yes.
to?
Yeah, that's actually the point.
What's that?
Because speed
And go to
limits on
Riverside Park.
streets require the state legislature, but this is a city park.
Well, it's
Or
a-
our portion of it.
No, it's both.
Right.
It's both the Greenway, it's the
So
Green,
let's send it to parks and to our,
our state officials.
Our state officials.
Because it's a park.
I think the Greenway is state.
The Greenway is state.
I think it's a state park.
It's not a state park.
It's
It's a city park,
Oh, really?
but the Greenway is state.
Because it's a state highway.
And we can send the resolution to the state.
We can send the resolution to whoever we want.
So all those in
No,
favor?
wait a second. I just want to make sure, are we excluding Riverwalk, which was,
It's
has
not
a
in- it's not in-
designated bike lane and a
Yeah, we said
walking lane?
72 to 96.
But Riverwalk.
Along the water, I put in
Shared
a
space.
speed
What do you
limit of
mean
10 miles
Riverwalk?
per hour in shared
Riverwalk, a
space.
new section that goes out over the water, just north of Big.
Well, of course, we're including
Oh,
that.
Well,
That's not really.
The bridge.
that's not really a shared space.
I was
Yes, it is,
specifically
people, I
thinking-
walk
I'll
there,
just say
I
shared
see
spaces,
people-
So that's not.
Yes.
that is a
Okay.
shared space.
It is a shared space.
It is a
It's
shared
very
space.
packed.
Shared space
Yeah, I
between
said a speed
72
limit of-
and 96.
Right, a speed
Okay.
limit of 10 miles per hour in all shared spaces. Okay, I said along the water, but do we want to not?
No,
I think it'd be all shared
space.
All shared spaces.
Can we also say for all wheeled vehicles?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Wait.
For those skateboards.
But all shared, are you talking about the Memorial Bike Lane up high? Is that
We're
gonna be?
talking about
Shared
all of them.
space?
Anywhere there
If
where
it's
there
a
could be
shared
children.
space, yes, we're talking about it.
I was asking about the section that was built a few years ago that goes out over the water. And then
Right.
it has a walking lane and a bike lane. And cyclists, including me, go regularly 15 miles an hour.
Well, I think if no one's
Not
there,
shared,
no one's
that's a
gonna,
dedicated, I'm sorry.
if there's a rule, that no one's gonna really enforce this anyway. But if it's a Sunday and it's a big, if it's
Don't
a,
bet on it.
it's a big crowd, I mean, that's when it gets, those areas get really crazy in good weather.
I think it's good to send a message. I've seen people zooming through and just put up a sign saying there's a speed limit. It might make them think twice about doing that.
Right.
Just for definition purposes, so shared, I mean, the Greenway that you're talking about has a painted line that's delineates bikers and walkers, right? So are we calling that shared space? when
Yes,
it-
oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's
Because
not
So-
physically separated.
they're
Okay, I
not
see.
physically
That's
separated.
fine.
It's the same, I feel the same way about the cherry walk, frankly.
Okay, ready?
Ready.
Okay, all those in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
All those opposed or abstaining? Non-committee members in favor of the speed limit? 4. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Done. Next. Difficulty of crossing into Riverside Park at 95 and 97th Streets. There is someone here.
Sounds like me.
That's you.
By the way, we have a big agenda still, so.
So, I think I can keep it down to about one sentence plus the handout. The opportunity, the opportunity is that Riverside Drive southbound is one lane, except between just north of 97th and just south of 95th. And I think that the second lane there was for the access to the Henry Hudson Parkway going north. That access was closed a number of years ago, and if you look at the aerial photograph, you can sort of guess where it was. That would allow that southbound lane to be removed. It would allow bulb outs at 95th and 97th, which would substantially decrease the crossing distance. I think that little traffic islands and things could be incorporated in the redesign and so on. If you watch a parent with a child in one arm and towing a trike in the other hand and so on, it's dangerous for them to try to cross these streets. My wife is now in a wheelchair. It is a real pain to try and get across with the wheelchair. And I think that this would be a safety improvement as well as an aesthetic improvement and a better use of the street space.
So, I'm having trouble finding it on the map, I'm sorry. So it's southbound
Yeah.
lane.
The wide
I've
street is
walked,
96.
I've walked across both of those streets with my young children. We used to live up there, and I know it's true. It feels very dangerous when you're walking.
You feel
You feel like you're walking across like a highway.
Yeah, so I know these blocks
And there's a
really
playground
well.
right there, so a lot of people with kids walk across them.
I know these blocks really well. Sorry, I don't know your name.
John West.
So I think John brings up a really important point that this is an incredibly dangerous few blocks of intersections. I'm not sure that your solution does enough to address the issue. And I think we should think about what the right solution is.
Please do. I'm just
yeah.
trying to get the conversation going.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a really important conversation because it is among the worst of the intersections in our district, especially 95th and Riverside Drive. I think the idea of pedestrian islands midway is intriguing. We have to think about what else could be possible. It's also, as you're coming out of the park at 95th Street, there's no good option because if you're crossing when you have the light, you're fighting all the cars coming off the highway, turning right south onto Riverside Drive. If you're going against the light, you are jaywalking across a major highway of Riverside Drive going north and south. And the north side of that intersection is even worse. So it is a real concern.
Yes, I've stood with my bike at 97th and Riverside, waiting for the light. And I'm tempted to roll through on a red if no traffic's coming.
Right.
People are coming down Riverside Drive and they turn left at 97th and go up the little Riverside, service road, even though it's against the 97th Street traffic. And it's one of those things that what you're suggesting, if we had islands that really would direct people and prevent illegal turns and that would channel the traffic and shorten the crosswalks. I agree with that. I heartily support your what?
Is that illegal? I do that all the time.
I've wondered because 97th Street stops.
Yeah, he's part of the problem.
But
Yeah.
I think it's dangerous because if you're on 97th Street, you don't think anybody's coming at you.
Yeah.
One question is, I wasn't sure the resolution of the meeting about the rotunda, but if that is shut down for years, then a lot of traffic is going to be diverted here. And I think that this, along with 96 and West End and all of these ramps, need like a really congestion pricing plus the only other non-congestion zone entrance is going to be shut down for 4 years. I just think we need to be proactive about that.
And keep in mind, we have asked, and we need to ask many more times, for the 96th Street exit from southbound to be reopened so that we can close 95th Street, which is problematic, and use 96th Street, which is a major crosstown street, and get people off 95th Street. We've asked state
So maybe
DOT
this should
for
be
that.
part of our resolution.
Yeah, because that is so important.
There is already a lot of traffic on 96th Street.
So if we, I mean, don't those conflict, if we
Yeah,
end
they
up
do.
asking for the southbound exit to be reopened, and we're, taking
that's what
away that
these-
lane, there's no way to merge, and you're, without islands, you're just creating more problems.
And what are you saying, the southbound exit, Rio?
Yeah,
You mean onto 96th Street, right? Okay.
Yes, which makes all the sense in the world, except that pedestrians get squished.
Well, no, we had talked about allowing cars coming, if you're going southbound, you loop around so that you're going onto the exit that now only goes to 95th Street, allowing cars to go back onto the northbound so they can get off at 96th Street. And then forcing the cars that are getting off on 95th Street.
But doesn't that make two merges?
It used to
Don't you have to
be.
then merge back into
We
traffic?
did a walking tour, Sue,
We did-
remember?
I was there, yeah.
And
That was a couple of years
95th
ago.
Street and Riverside Drive is a problematic place.
That was
It's problematic for pedestrians,
Yes.
for motorists, for everybody. We've even asked for some tactile feel when the cars exit there so they know they're approaching a bike path and a walk path and all of that. And we haven't gotten anything yet. So we really need to push our state elected officials to reopen make 96th Street the main exit from there again.
So if you look at this picture, there's a car, there are two red cars on that exit going onto 95th Street. The second car that's almost pointing north onto the highway to allow cars in that spot to continue north and get off the 96th Street exit instead of exiting at the 95th Street exit.
Close that 95th Street exit.
Either close it or possibly restricting it so that you can only go south, or possibly you could only go south on Riverside Drive, or possibly you could go either north or south.
Yeah.
The problem with just closing it is that you can't get, then you're forcing everyone
All the way over to
onto
West Side.
96th Street and
Where
not
they'll have to
allowing
go to
anyone
West
onto
End.
Riverside
We're
Drive.
not siphon them off, but it's all set up to do that. The ones who will turn. who go
We
southbound.
talked about having a 95th Street exit for southbound Riverside Drive only.
Yeah.
I just have a question to move this along. Do we want to propose a solution here, or just have a resolution saying we need to look at it and come up with a solution? Because
Well,
I think
it's also two different people,
we
right?
have a
The exit is a state issue, but the potential, like, pedestrian islands and stuff is a city issue.
And I thought we had a resolution on, Andrew, didn't we have a
We
resolution?
have-
We did.
Yeah, we definitely have a resolution.
We
on
absolutely do.
So I think we should find it and reactivate it.
Yeah. We all walked
do
that.
we need
But I
to
think
do
right
anything
now-
more at this point?
But I think right now we need a resolution on making 95th and 97th safe to cross, or safer.
So one solution is pedestrian islands.
Yes.
That could be a quick, easy.
Okay, that could be an
improvement.
example. We should have a resolution proposing the DOT look at these two important intersections, make, with the goal of making them safer and more pedestrian friendly. And we could specifically recommend considering pedestrian islands, but ultimately they need to look at it and figure out what they need to do to make it safer for pedestrians.
Another consideration is signal timing.
Well, again, we're calling on them to figure it out, and they know what
And that
can be
we,
done.
and as quickly as possible, because summer's coming.
Yep.
Maybe.
Okay, all those in favor of that resolution?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Well done, John.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you.
Non-committee?
Abstaining, non-committee members in favor of it? 1, 2, 3, 4. Any opposed or abstaining? Resolution passes. Hopefully we'll have a safer 95th and 97th very soon. Okay. Residential parking permits. I'm not sure why this is.
Why is this on here?
We have to pass it.
Oh, the resolution, yes.
Yeah.
Why don't you, yep.
Yeah, but it's not here. So
We have to pass what?
the resolution that we all traded around by email, we still have to pass it and then it will go to the board.
Okay, well, I wrote it, so.
Well, we have, I know, Richard, do you want to say anything?
I'm here on behalf of residential permit parking. And having been on a zoning board of adjustment for 7 years, I empathize with you very much. Also, I am Richard Van Dusen. I live at 110 West 90th Street. I am a self-admitted car lover. I park at the Monterey Garage, store at the Monterey Garage, because I only drive out of the city. I don't drive in the city. And I agree with Mark that we should have kept that 64th Street left turn out of Broadway open for the Society for Ethical Culture, where I'm also a trustee.
Of course, from the Monterey Garage to out of the city is in the city.
Is in the city, right? All right. Anyway, I will pass this on to Sarah to put in the minutes. But my observation, I started this back when I came to the city in 2007. I realized that so many cars are parked on our neighborhood streets that have out-of-state licenses. Not just local commuters like Connecticut or New Jersey, but from South Carolina, Massachusetts, Arizona, and all kinds of other places that are here all the time. These are cars that I believe are owned by residents that are registered out of state, so they can save on the insurance as well as the premiums, whatever else the fees. So
there's an awful lot of Vermont cars for a while.
yeah, right. And Maine, it's like, but they're here all the time. They're weekends, weekdays, nights, and I did a tracking on them one time. I went taking pictures of license plates just to sort of track them down. But in any case, that is the real issue with residential permit parking. We need parking for the people who live here and need their cars to go to work. But I don't know why, if you live in a street that has 5 subway lines and 4 bus lines, why you would need a car anyway. But so I'm going to leave this with Sarah. But my point is that the residential parking is not about congestion pricing, although that may have something to do with it. But we need to also get more cars off the streets for space for the bike racks.
The resolution, I'll just point of information, doesn't specifically call for residential parking permits. It calls for a variety of mechanisms for the city to look at a variety of solutions, and that's listed as one of the potential solutions. Any discussion on the proposed resolution? We circulated it. I don't have a copy with me.
I thought it was pretty good.
Do you want to read it, Sarah, since it's yours?
I don't have it.
I have it from your email.
Yeah.
Could you read it? Unless you want to, I can read
No,
it.
you can do it.
So it's long, but congestion pricing passed in the state budget and will be implemented in New York City by January 2021 at the latest. The boundary of congestion pricing will be at the bottom of CB7, charged on cars that drive south of 60th Street. There is concern that this will cause an increase in the number of non-residents looking for parking on our streets, so that they can park for free and take public transportation into the congestion zone. This will cause an increase in people, quote, cruising the neighborhood looking for parking, and the associated pollution and safety risks to our pedestrians. Additionally, the committee believes that the city's current policy of allowing the vast majority of street space adjacent to curbs to be used for free parking needs to be revisited, regardless of this effect of congestion pricing. This amount of city-owned land is a precious resource in a city as dense as New York, and as with all city resources, should be used in a manner that helps those in need and/or creates the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Free parking for private cars strongly encourages private car use over mass transit, as well as the common practice of hunting for an available free space, thereby creating traffic congestion, pollution, environmental degradation, and unsafe conditions for pedestrians, cyclists, and other users of the street. It also exacerbates economic inequality by directly limited city resources to private car owners, a group of people more economically privileged than non-car owners, rather than to New Yorkers in general or to New Yorkers who are disadvantaged either economically or physically. Many cities in the United States, including Boston, Chicago, and Washington, D.C., and even in New York State, including Albany and Buffalo, use residential permit parking to limit parking on neighborhood streets to those who live in the neighborhood. These programs have been quite successful, and there's no reason that they couldn't work in New York City. Alternatively, the city could make all city streets, including side streets, metered parking with a program for surge pricing during heavy traffic times. Though this would not limit the parking to residents, it would create the appropriate economic incentives to reflect the true value of a curbside parking spot. Thereby, the committee resolves that the city discontinue the policy of providing free parking for private cars and consider 1, more productive and equitable uses of curbside space, and 2, the most efficient way to get fair value for the provision of any private parking it does provide. I'm about half done now. The committee specifically recommends that the city's review of this policy include, but not necessarily be limited to, residential parking permits, metering capable of surge pricing, and the best practices of other major cities. Finally, we urge the Traffic Mobility Review Board to include one or the other in the congestion pricing implementation to address the issue of additional people looking for parking in our district due to congestion pricing.
That's not the final version of the resolution, but it's very similar. So if we could.
I would vote for the conclusion of that, but I don't like a lot of the language in it,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
it's been taken out, I assure you. The final draft of the resolution was in the draft minutes that I sent out, and I didn't take a copy with me. But it was
I
in.
couldn't vote for that language, but I would vote for the ultimate reasoning, you know.
I don't think I have the draft minutes.
I don't either.
I haven't either.
I think I just sent them.
I think you sent them to me as well, but.
Yeah, I definitely sent them to you, Sue. And
But I don't think they're on my phone. I think they're on my iPad.
yeah, I don't have access to.
So what were the changes?
I'll let me in line.
No. I mean, like in
the whole discussion of Boston and all that was not in the final.
Yeah, you know,
it was a lot.
Why don't you send it around, give our comments, and we can just do it shortly before the full board or something.
Okay.
So, you know, I had searched for an email from Sarah because I thought it was Sarah's. I found Howard's, and then.
Okay, it's a lot shorter.
Yeah, but then Sue wrote, I have a couple of comments in caps.
No, that's.
No.
Right, that was like the first draft.
That was the
Okay.
first draft. There was-
Yeah, so.
A long time ago.
So
Yeah.
basically, the therefore is the committee resolves that the city discontinue the policy of providing free parking and consider more productive and equitable uses of curbside space. And the most efficient way to get fair value for the provision of any private parking it does provide. The committee specifically recommends that the city's review of this policy include, but not necessarily limited to, residential parking permits, metering capable of surge pricing, and best practices of other major cities.
Absolutely.
That's the fifth of.
Therefore.
That's the therefore.
So could, you want to
We can vote
approve,
for
therefore be it resolved and just have a simpler preamble?
Can we have a little discussion about this?
Sure.
There are a lot of great ideas in here, and it seems like there's multiple resolutions within that and all that you wrote.
Can we just excise that? That's not the resolution that was on the table.
But even at the closing statement is there's there's
Yeah.
residential parking, right, permits, and then there's eliminating all free parking, and then there's surge pricing, and then there's the issue as it relates to congestion pricing, right? So there's a lot of juice in here, and it's all good stuff. It's just that I also don't know that I've personally heard the community weigh in on a lot of these things, especially if you're going to take away and resolve citywide all free parking. We had a conversation and we heard, I mean, I'm for residential parking permits. That's a simple, just personally, I'm for that, but it just seems like it's a very, very.
I'm amazed David Zhang left before this point.
Yeah.
So I raised this last month and it was we put off having a vote for a month so that it could be on the agenda and so that the community would have the ability to come and discuss. I'm not okay with putting it off anymore when it's a very timely issue and it's on the agenda. So the fact that people.
We don't have it, that we can look at it.
Also, we're not supporting any one of those
Right, we're just asking
alternatives. We're
the
just
city to look.
raising them as things that DOT could explore.
What do you mean we don't have it to look at? We
don't.
I mean,
we
pass it
often have
around.
resolution. We don't have it printed, but.
Right, none of the resolutions we voted on tonight are actually in writing.
Written out.
However,
Yeah.
this is a particularly tricky
This
one,
is
and it's a
very
little
tricky.
bit of a landmine, and I think Andrew's suggestion made a lot of sense,
Yes.
which is Howard finds the right one, we circulate, and we have a pre-meeting,
Right.
15
Yeah,
minutes
send it
before the
around,
regular
we'll give our
meeting and do the vote
suggestions, we'll
then.
have a pre-meeting, and it won't be delayed even a month.
Perfect.
Right, so then we'll have a quorum to actually review the minutes and vote on it, having seen it pre-meeting.
Right, well,
Yeah.
it was emailed to all of us. And granted, I read the wrong, an earlier
Yes,
version,
definitely the
but
wrong one.
we do have a version that was emailed as the last version that was emailed on April 22nd. So it was available to us, and most of the resolutions we vote on in the committee, we don't have a printed or even written up resolution. We do it on the fly. So I don't see why this should be different. And it also was on the
So many
agenda.
pieces to this.
Because enough
But-
people have asked for.
So many pieces.
That was my only, it's just.
I think you
there's a lot
should
of-
wait. I think you should pass it around again and
It won't be delayed even a month. We'll do it at the.
you vote, it
We'll
take you
vote.
10 minutes to vote.
Yeah.
I'm
So
cool
if you
with
have comment, if you pass it around and somebody has a comment, they can send it back to Howard that they like something or they don't like something.
But yeah, I mean, it is true, we've all had it since April 15th.
Yeah. It has gone around.
Yeah, and it has gone around,
It
we
went
have
around for
commented on
comments,
it.
yeah.
So I want to propose it right now. It's something I proposed last month and we put it off a month.
Well, I never
Hey.
saw the responses to my comments.
Well, I think everybody is,
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And you were copied on the emails.
Yeah.
But we don't have it in front of us,
That-
and it's a complicated issue, and
Well, I'm
Yeah,
proposing the
everyone has it in
resolution.
their
Is anyone
email box
seconding it?
right now. I'll second it.
I included it in the draft
but the
minutes.
chairs have the right to,
It's a seconded
it doesn't matter.
resolution.
The chairs have the right to wait.
Here it is.
I found it. Hey.
Now, can you
Okay.
flash it on the wall so we can all see it?
Hang on. It's at the end.
And Roberta, you can sit. I thought we were
Yeah.
we were planning to put this on the May Transportation Committee agenda.
Okay.
What's the date of
It
it?
is about half the length, but I'll read it.
April 15th.
A congestion pricing plan was recently passed by the state government, which will impose fees on cars that travel south of 60th Street. The committee is concerned that this will cause an increase in the number of non-residents looking for parking on streets just north of this border,
Wait.
so that they can park for free and then take
That's
public
not what I have
transportation.
as the,
There we go.
This is the final. I wrote it. It's in the minutes. So,
Okay.
so everyone listen up.
okay, okay.
Because I had to take into account everyone's comments, and then
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
circulated this, and I
Okay.
didn't hear anything back.
Okay.
So it might not be exactly, okay. But this is all innocuous. This was an innocent people, quote unquote, cruising the neighborhood looking for parking, already a significant problem. Additionally, the committee believes that the city's current policy of allowing the vast majority of street space adjacent to curbs to be used for free parking needs to be revisited regardless of the effect of congestion pricing. This large amount of city-owned land is a precious resource in a city as dense as New York, and as with all city resources, should be used in a manner that helps those in need and/or creates the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Free parking for private cars strongly encourages private car use over mass transit, thereby creating traffic congestion, pollution, environmental degradation, and unsafe conditions for pedestrians, cyclists, and others users of the street, 2/3 of the way through. It also exacerbates economic inequality by directing limited city resources to private car owners as a group of people, rather than to New Yorkers in general, or to New Yorkers who are disadvantaged either economically or physically. Therefore, the committee resolves that the city discontinue the policy of providing free parking for private cars and consider: 1, more productive and equitable uses of curbside space, and 2, the most efficient way to get fair value for the provision of any private parking it does provide. The committee specifically recommends that the city review of this policy include, but not necessarily be limited to, paid residential parking permits, metering capable of surge pricing, and the best practices of other major cities. That was the final resolution.
Great.
A thing of beauty.
So it really does call for the end of free curbside parking.
There should be some.
We are
sort of-
nothing if not bold.
I guess you are. It says that.
It says that.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
Yep,
Yeah, I have a few questions.
sure.
First question, have you looked into how you're going to administer this? Anybody who's a resident here could get a permit. Okay. Might that encourage people to buy a car?
You have to pay for the permit.
And the car.
And the insurance. Yeah, it might encourage people to buy a car. The
It might.
second thing is what this young lady brought up. There'll be a fee for those. Do you know what the fee will be?
No.
Okay. The idea is pretty good. The third thing is, don't you have to get state approval to do this?
Absolutely, yes.
You know, I actually brought it up with State Senator Robert Jackson. He said that this is a local issue and that Albany and Buffalo have it and that it can be done locally. It does not need state approval.
What would this mean for
And that's what-
merchants
that's
who
what-
don't live in this neighborhood but drive to their place of business?
Commercial
We're
loading
not calling for,
zones.
this resolution specifically
No,
does not
commercial
call for
loading zones, not
residential
for
parking
someone's
permits.
private car.
It points out the problem and throws the ball for the DOT to figure out what to do. It notes that other communities have come up with surge meters or residential parking permits, but it specifically does not call for either of those two things.
Actually, I can also, I know that the ore washers guy uses his private car, but he has a commercial vehicle tag for it because he uses it for his commercial business.
Yeah, but I
So-
don't think they all do.
But they could, I think
But
it's
it could say that if you have a business, that you could have residential parking. And we're advisory anyway.
Yeah, it's like the speed limit in Riverside Park. You know, this is just, we're expressing our opinion. We're advisory. Yes, sir.
One more question, if I may. Are these going to be administrated one to a household, or will people be able to buy multiple?
We don't know.
That's another
Usually
problem.
it's done just one.
Usually it's one.
Yeah.
That would be the sensible way to do it, right?
That, we're not getting into the granular detail. We're recommending that they look into it.
We actually had somebody from one of the universities come and give a really terrific presentation on residential parking permits. He was terrific.
Here?
We should, yes.
When?
Several years ago.
Oh, wow.
So, and this is
More than
a
4.
question, not an opinion. So we made a statement, we're saying that there's economic inequality. You know, I grew up in the city. People that park the cars on the street generally cannot afford a garage. So there are indeed luxury cars that I can't afford that are parked on the street. Then I also see jalopies and Chevrolets and Toyotas. And so I don't know that it's a fact. I'm not saying that it is or is not. It's just a question. How do we know that someone who owns a car and drives as a teacher, drives to Riverdale or New Jersey, is more wealthy than it's a question. I don't know that
It's sort of stated as fact in this.
Well,
that's
this
my point.
resolution does not endeavor to give answers. It just raises the question of what should be done to prevent this kind of problem that we're having and will get much worse after congestion pricing.
Well, just answer to that, you know, in general, people who drive are twice as wealthy as people who don't, who take mass transit. It doesn't mean that everybody is, but the question is, should the city be subsidizing people to use private vehicles by giving them free parking? It's already very expensive to own a car. It's marginally additionally expensive to have to pay to park it. But you know, the question is, should the city be helping people on the off chance that they may be needy? You know, when they already own a car, and so they're at least not needy enough so that they can't afford a car.
Yeah, I don't know. That's very compelling what you just said. I just don't know. You just stated as fact again that somebody who owns a car is twice as wealthy as someone who doesn't.
On average.
I mean,
just on average.
If it's a Toyota or it's a Ferrari, the most expensive cars that I've seen in this neighborhood are all in garages.
No, but I think the
don't
point.
see Ferraris or
I'm just saying on average.
I'll just quote Michael Bloomberg. Why does the city charge someone $2.75 to go on the subway downtown, which is eco, very efficient, and doesn't charge them anything to go downtown in their car? That was his
they are
point.
now, it's just a surge price.
Well, not yet.
No, not yet.
And
well,
they will. I mean,
if you're totally within the
law,
district, yeah.
But I mean, also, I think that like the point is that if you don't have a car and you're economically, you know, less well off, you're certainly less well off than anyone with a car. So like, it might be true that some people who don't have cars are wealthy, but everyone who has a car is more wealthy than people who literally can't afford it. You see what I'm saying?
If you're economically less well off and don't have a car, you're not benefiting from the essentially free space that you get from a free parking spot.
Right.
I mean, I can't park my storage unit on, like, I can't just use alternate side parking as storage. I have to pay for that in my building.
And there are actually people in my neighborhood up at near 100th Street on Riverside who store a lot of stuff in their car.
Yeah.
There's one hoarder who just has a large vehicle filled with stuff, and he just moves it a few times a week and has basically free storage on
the city
Riverside
to
Drive.
take a look at this and try to think how to use the street more efficiently.
I have a motion to,
I'm ready to vote.
yeah.
There's just one wording thing. It says that congestion pricing will result in people doing X, Y, Z items.
Could, yeah.
Actually,
likely.
Oh, yeah.
Likely.
Yeah. Are you voting?
Okay.
Yes, we're voting.
Yes, that's not a problem.
Okay.
All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed? All those abstaining? 2, 5, 0, 2. And for cause, there's nothing else. All those non-board members in favor? 1, 2, 3. No, okay?
Okay.
Just for point of
Right.
information,
No?
it says
No,
the
Mark's
committee
abstaining.
is concerned that this will cause an increase. It doesn't say it will cause an increase, it's concerned. So that it was a very good author.
So I have an hour commute, and I just want to give you an update on Central Park West.
Oh, great. Oh,
Thank you so
yeah.
much. So the good news is that we're gonna come in June, and we're gonna give a presentation. The reason why we took a long time is because the corridor is very complex, and we have to do our traffic analysis, and we have to meet with other stakeholders like the museum, the conservancy. So we are going to have a pre-meeting at the end of May, and we're going to invite the transportation co-chair and, of course, Roberta and the elected officials. So the pre-meeting will be held at the end of May, and then we'll come to the transportation committee meeting in June to give a presentation. Okay?
Great.
Thank
you so much.
Make sure we do our homework before we.
Yes.
Can you give a teaser and say it's two-way?
Biplane or the
Any
car lane?
info?
I can't give you a teaser. I just can't. I mean, to be honest with you, all I know is that our staffers met with the commissioner and briefed her on it. So we have to share the information with others as well. So I think we're definitely good to go in January. I mean, in June. We're good.
Let me just make a point of information. This did happen faster
Yeah.
than the Amsterdam or Columbus lane, so thank you.
It's a very complex corridor because you have a lot of key important stakeholders that we have to, discuss the proposal with. And we haven't shared any design with anyone, just so you know. So what we'll be sharing will be with the community board. And we want to meet with the electeds. I think we want to meet with the council member one-on-one and give her a briefing first, as a matter of, courtesy, because it's something that she's been, supporting. So that's all.
As have we. Thanks a lot,
Thank
Colin.
you.
Where do you,
I commute to Queens.
oh, good luck.
It's an hour bike ride?
Yeah. I wish I could ride, but it's not happening. It'll take me 2 days to get home.
Thanks so much, Colleen. You have a good trip home. That's good news.
And just to clarify, you said June 2019, right?
You can hold me to that.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving along. Plan for West, I think we just did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's,
Yeah.
okay, last but not least, Andrew, budget priorities.
Did we sufficiently, should we just point out to Colleen that we really look for DOT to have a plan for those blocks? I mean, it's part of the target conversation, but.
By the way, can you introduce yourself? I don't know who you are. I know you're a new community.
Sorry,
board.
I'm a new community board member. My name is Julian Giordano. I am a sophomore in high school.
Oh, wow.
But I'm just going to all the community meetings this week and the rest of this month to see what's going to
Which high school?
Stuyvesant High School.
And what time is your bedtime?
Yes, that is.
And, some of you probably know his dad, Chris Giordano,
Yeah,
is
sure,
pretty
sure,
active. Yeah.
Oh, from the,
Yeah.
the
Blocks
Association.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, 66 Blocks Association.
See, yeah.
I actually,
Wow.
and I actively lobbied his father to join the board, and he said, I would love to, except my son is applying and I can't go against him.
That's great.
And
welcome.
does everybody know Maya?
Hi, my name is Schmidt. I'm also a new CB7 member. Also, I'm attending various committee meetings, trying to get to know them. I work in public health at a nonprofit called Public Health Solutions under Deputy Director for Sexual and Reproductive Health, and I do a lot of work to improve contraceptive access among low-income New Yorkers.
Thanks. Welcome.
We're the fun.
We are.
Yeah.
Reservation.
We get big crowds.
No, we're the fun.
Okay.
You can't promote your committee.
We're past all of our bedtime, so let's make this quick.
So about two
Dinner
weeks,
time, wow.
2 weeks or so ago, I sent everybody pages from last year's DNS and asking you what you would like to see in this year's. I have received 0 responses
Because
from.
you did such a good job.
That was last year's though.
When did you send
What
us?
we did-
April 24th.
Sorry.
What do we want to change?
I looked at
What
it.
is no longer applicable? What has been achieved, if anything?
When is this due?
End of this month.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
Can we just say narrow the travel lanes on West 66th Street between Amsterdam and West End? That was done, yes?
West 66, I don't think that was done, no.
Okay. Change the timing on the traffic signal at 66th and West End Avenue to.
That was not done either.
Continued work on the 79th Street pedestrian rotunda.
That, of course, is in progress, so that.
Take that off. Recommend a study of the crosstown block of West 94th Street. West 94th Street? Anyone know if that was done?
I don't
think so.
Can you read that language?
Recommend a study of the crosstown block of West 94th Street.
Cross? Oh, that's
I
the
said
one.
94th, right?
That's the one that has the traffic calming.
Oh, yeah. And so we were saying that they could study it to replicate it elsewhere.
Yes. Oh, study to replicate also.
Yeah, I would leave that.
Yeah.
Okay. Here, you like this one. Install a 96th Street exit option for southbound traffic on Henry Hudson
That
Parkway.
continues to be, we gotta have that in there, yeah.
Concurrently, MCB7 encourages continued measures to ensure pedestrian safety throughout the district, including data. CB7 hopes to have complete data on the top 10 collision-prone intersection areas of the district. Understanding this need is constantly updating and evolving.
So what's actually not in there that we've all expressed
I don't know.
concern about is what's going to happen as a result of congestion pricing and how that will affect our district. We have nothing in there, obviously, because it wasn't on anyone's
Maybe
radar.
we could put the resolution we just adopted and put that in the DNS.
We could put some of the verbiage in there from this, yeah. We don't actually put resolutions in it. But
No, we change it, but the notion that the city should look at the streetscape and figure out how to make it more efficient and safer. Yep.
But also the imbalance caused by the closure of the rotunda.
Yeah, I didn't focus on that, you're right.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Since we have new members, can I just raise a question, which is, every year we seem to do this DNS and I never see any outcome from it, and it seems like it's an academic exercise that doesn't amount to anything.
This is a great conversation to have at steering. That's what steering's all about.
Actually, could I answer that in a little steering?
Sure.
We have very few charter mandated obligations as community boards, and this is one of them. And every mayor, since I've been on community board, and even before that, has taken pot shots at community boards, in part saying that we don't take seriously our charter mandated functions and instead try to tell the mayor how to run his job. I think we have every reason to tell the mayor, whoever the mayor is, how to run his job, but to cover our own back 40, we need to take seriously the district needs statement so that if for no other reason that we don't fall victim to these encroachments on our jurisdiction. That's my answer to your question.
Let's go through the rest.
Do we have anything on loading zones?
Right down loading zones.
Loading
So
zones.
here, countdown timers at all intersections to alert pedestrians, blah, blah, blah. That's a request to stop
We can
here
put
on
loading
red signs
signs in
for
there.
left turns on every street on Broadway to ensure that motorists know. We can get that. Striping, signage, and neck downs, which alert motorists that they are entering a school block and will improve safety. Did not get that. Red light cameras. Did we just get some red light cameras?
We just got school zone cameras, yeah, in a big way.
Okay.
They're not in yet, but we're getting them.
Okay, so do that, and speed cameras and speed signs to reduce speeding on streets. Left turn calming measures, more pedestrians.
You know what we didn't get though? And it's sort of, we asked for it when we asked for the 96th Street exit. Signage, simple signage.
Yeah.
When you come off the highway saying, New York City laws, 25 miles an hour speed limit, no right on red.
Who's writing this down? We need.
I have to.
Andrew. Good, thank you. Okay, traffic light mid-block on 106th Street between Columbus and Amsterdam Avenue to enable seniors, etc. Columbus and Amsterdam 106th Street. Didn't that get voted down?
Yeah, it did. That was denied. No, it
We
wasn't.
adopted it.
DOT
DOT said
said
things anyway.
Yes,
And then they said, we'll think about it again. If we, so I think you want to.
So we want to
Just
keep
leave
it
it on.
Leave it in.
Yeah.
Because
Okay. Safety improvements for Columbus Circle, which is a little out of our jurisdiction, to enable pedestrians and bicyclists to safely navigate.
They committed to putting
did
in,
that.
yeah, that's done.
That's done. Okay. So that's everything on this page. There's another page. Hold on.
Wait, one thing, it does say portable breath tests, which the PD has stated are effective and needed in CB7.
Yeah,
There's an economic issue.
Right, that, just so you know, and I don't think this is official, so I don't want to speak in advance, but I understand that that's in the works, and I think that it's something that is coming from this office.
So funding for them to get more breathalyzers is coming.
Yeah, well, again, I don't want to speak out of turn, you know, ask Roberta, but my understanding is that it's been allocated from this office.
Great.
For at least one for 2.4 and one for 2.0.
Great.
And I think it's coming out of the CB7 office. But again, you didn't hear that from me yet.
So another thing I would say that we should put into this area of street safety is the speed limit signs that have radar that say, you know, you're going 32 miles per hour, the speed limit's 25.
Yeah, I think
those are very effective.
On the bike lanes?
Sorry?
On the bike lanes?
No, on the streets.
I thought that was on there though. Didn't we have something about that last year?
No, we have.
Those
I
signs
don't
that tell
see
you
it
what your
here.
speed is.
Oh, for some reason I thought we had put it on last year, the radar.
I thought we did too, and I don't see it.
Huh.
Well, actually, you know what? We do have speed cameras, speed signs to
Speed
reduce
signs.
speeding. I don't know if it's clear that speed
that
signs means.
Yeah.
I think we need to be explicit
So
about
this
that.
is for motorists.
Yeah.
For motorists, signs showing your
current
Okay.
speed.
Yeah. I'll look up to see.
Where
if
would
there's a-
where would we strategically place them in business?
Coming off the highways.
Yeah.
No, well, not just. I would.
No, just
throughout the
periodically on the
district.
roads.
Yeah, throughout, but I don't know that we have to put that in the DNS.
Yeah.
I remember.
Just call it a your
Report
speed
saying that
sign.
Isn't West End Avenue fairly problematic? People tend to speed on that avenue.
If not anymore.
But no, the problem with West End now is that there are commercial trucks that are on commercial avenue.
I thought I remember recently that someone from maybe it was Sergeant Montgomery, saying there's a particular avenue where speeding was an issue. Does anyone remember that?
No.
But that's where those.
I don't think it was West End anyway.
The pedestrian, today she told us that the pedestrian injuries this month happened on Central Park West Broadway and West End Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that that's a speeding thing, because she said there were people walking out.
And that's
cars.
just this month.
Okay,
How
so
about-
there's another page, and most of it is verbiage that you can just update the statistics and stuff. There's just 2 points on it that are specific. The corridor between 95th and 100th Streets, superblock west of Central Park West. It's a requesting comprehensive district-wide analysis of transportation issues with immediate consideration given to 95th and 100th Streets, superblock. So we still want that. And continued monitoring of commercial loading zones along
So
the Reed
we
Center.
definitely still want that, considering that 96th Street, 5th and 6th Street interchange is what's going to be the ones that are going to take all the slack when 79th Street is closed.
Yeah, then we covered it. We just did the job.
I got a couple
Couple more?
We've supported daylighting, so how about daylighting the top 10 most dangerous intersections?
We actually, maybe I didn't say it out loud on the first page, it said daylighting in every corner. It might be more appropriate to say daylighting the top 10 most dangerous.
Yeah.
That's better.
Every
That's
year.
more realistic.
Yeah, every year. Yeah, the most dangerous.
And the other one is, how about, there's no protected, no protection for cyclists going across town.
Yeah,
Do we want to get behind that?
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh, you
want
mean
more protected bike
The
lanes.
transverses, you mean through through
Oh,
Central Park?
Yeah.
Well,
Transverse
no,
through the city
87,
and-
within our district, 86, 96.
Well, considering that
72nd.
we put a flag in the ground about 110th Street and insisting that it be a protected bike lane,
Yeah.
and they came back and rather insultingly just presented. And, well, apparently they just decided that they don't need to come back a third time, and they just did it. They just painted the lines.
On 110?
What talk about?
I talked to DOT about that, they were 10. Didn't put for protected bike lanes, said we do protected bike lanes where community boards really fight for it. Otherwise,
So we fought really hard, but we're not the lowest common
but they haven't
denominator.
presented,
Yeah,
they
it's
haven't
not
really
really.
presented it.
They're
Up the north side of 100.
Their plan for getting bicycles through Douglas Circle is so unsafe. It's ridiculous. You'd be much safer to walk it across the street than to ride through Douglas Circle.
Maybe that's what they're trying to
If you go
encourage.
through Douglas Circle, you're gonna encounter skateboarders who are, so be careful with that.
But yeah, we should put something in about crosstown.
Yeah.
Yes, crosstown protected bike lanes.
Yes.
And more protected bike lanes on, Central Park West.
Broadway.
Broadway. I really think there
Riverside
should be
Drive.
a traffic,
Riverside
car
Drive.
traffic on Broadway.
Mark.
We're going a little crazy here, yes?
Do we want to say something about that idea of maybe adding some pedestrianized areas on Broadway?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's kind of an all or nothing. I mean, it's gotta be a stretch. You can't have this pedestrianized, then traffic, then this pedestrianized.
Did we pass a resolution?
I'm good with putting that in.
I
Seventy-
would propose
73 to 79.
pedestrianizing the east side of Broadway between 72nd and 79th.
73rd and 79th, yeah.
North, well, the east side.
The northbound.
Yeah.
lanes, yeah.
72nd to,
Yeah, I'm really uncomfortable. This is a major thing to say, and
Sure
we have
is.
no
I know.
board direction.
Yeah,
And Howard, what happens to the M104 bus stops then?
Oh my God, the M104.
You could still,
You can still do the
Well,
bus.
yeah, but anyway, yeah, you're right. It's a little bit too involved.
Beacon Hotel, the Beacon Theater,
I was just throwing out the idea.
Yeah.
Not a good one.
Even if you just did
Good idea.
73 to
It's just-
74.
it needs
but-
more
But it needs
vetting.
more thought.
Yeah.
Okay,
More support.
anything else?
Yeah, should we put speed limits in the parks? in?
There is one more thing.
So it's in all parks?
Is that a district?
It's already a
meeting?
speed limit in Central Park, Mark.
No, for bikes,
So
what we just passed.
Under DNS item 11, there's something about
15 miles
budget
an hour.
questions for the full budget consultations. And you've heard me speak about these, and I think the efficient way to do it, so effectively, this is, the district managers usually are the ones who set up these budget consultations with agencies one by one. They come in for an hour, they talk. And it's strictly a budget thing, it's not a district needs thing. So I'll send to your chairs and you guys can circulate as you think, the questions and answers that were given at last year's. I'll send it around as a PDF. The questions need to be Manhattan-wide, not just, hey, at the corner of 83rd and Broadway, there's this thing. But if there's an additional question that you think ought to be asked of DOT as a budget matter, and it needs to be dollars and cents, then the district managers are going to get together in July. So if we can have that at your June meeting, then we can try to make sure that that's in there somewhere.
which municipalities are they? You're saying it's just DOT, or you said the government agencies?
Yeah, so there are,
Sanitation, fire department, police department?
all of them come.
Okay.
The Department of Education now comes, although they send people who have no knowledge of anything budgetary. It's very convenient.
It's ironic, because the Department of Education.
You'll be sending that around to all of us, Mark?
I'll send it to you two, and then you guys
We'll
will decide how to
okay.
deal with it. I'll send it to Andrew, who's good here in the
Thank you.
team.
Great. This
I
was a
gotta make
long,
PDFs out of these
long
things.
meeting. Anything
I
else?
should have gotten it last year, because I thought Penny was gonna circulate it to you, but I think maybe she didn't, so.
Okay.
Wait, I just have 6 things I need to bring up.
You go ahead and start.